So the other night I watched Netflix's latest original film, Sierra Burgess is a Loser. But despite coming out in 2018, parts of this film will take you right back to the creepier John Hughes films of the 80s. Yeah, I'm looking at you, 16 Candles. Usually it's a really inappropriate joke, or just a complete lack of self-awareness on the part of the characters, who are actually pretty terrible people through and through. But there's something seriously off about this film. The decisions the characters make will leave you genuinely baffled, and there's such a poor representation of relationships and human interaction on display here. There's this weird dissonance where the film does acknowledge some of its characters' flaws, but then remains completely oblivious to others. Not in a way that really resolves them, it just tokenly points out a couple before ploughing through to the finish with an ending it hasn't earned at all. It's not just that the characters do bad things, but the film wants us to be on their side and keep rooting for them regardless. So let's break down the film as we collectively ask ourselves, what was Netflix thinking with this one? So the main character Sierra is introduced as the only child of successful parents who are both writers. She's described by another character in the film as not everyone's type, and her technique for brushing her teeth apparently involves smearing toothpaste around her face. It's kind of a strange opening, but we'll give it the benefit of the doubt so far and see where it goes. We then arrive at school and meet Sierra's best friend Dan, who's heavily implied to be gay in the most token ways possible, and a triple threat of popular girls who act as the film's pseudo-antagonists. This is ripped straight out of Mean Girls, and we can at least forgive the stereotypically gay best friend in Mean Girls due to the age of the film, but the inclusion here feels really weird. Also, two of the girls are basically irrelevant, and the third, Veronica, undertakes an almost unbelievable character shift halfway through the film.
I meant looking at you makes me want to gouge my eyes out. Were you snake-eyeing me?
Yeah, sorry.
It just goes to show how lazy the writers are being to copy and paste this classic setup of those characters from a high school coming-of-age film, and then manipulate them into the most contrived narrative arcs or just completely forget they exist. We then meet Sierra's teacher, who's clearly inspired by the kind of sassy poetry teacher who shows up in films like 10 Things I Hate About You. Except instead of being funny, in this film the teacher physically assaults students, gives terrible advice, and shows unfettered favoritism towards Sierra.
Sierra, your last paper really wowed me. I just know your poetry is going to outshine all the other poems in the class.
Although she does challenge a transphobic joke, it's in poor taste that this joke is included at all. The teacher gives them an assignment to write a poem, and then the audience forgets about this boring and overused plot device. Sierra is shown to be very capable at school and well read, but despite this, the careers advisor is unimpressed with her college applications, telling her she has no unique selling point and should instead lean on her famous parents or take part in some faux charitable acts as a means of self-promotion. This seems like a straw man on the part of the writers. Like, sure, verve and charisma will give you an edge in life, but there are plenty of people who make their way through hard work and academic success. Not everyone wants to be an influencer or Instagram famous. This might be projection, but I think the writers are taking a jab at modern culture, in particular youth culture, as being vapid and unable to value anything that isn't the absolute pinnacle of the zeitgeist. This may be partly true, but it's a lot more nuanced than that, and the execution is so poor and ill thought out that it just comes across as preachy and a mess. Next we see the three antagonists hanging out in a cafe waiting to kickstart the film's plot, when Veronica is asked for her number by the likeable but easily led astray Jamie, a football player from a rival school. Veronica gives Jamie Sierra's number instead, and so begins the film's main hook, a sort of intentional, sort of not, catfish. Jamie begins texting Sierra, and the two proceed to text each other all night. And not once during this night of bonding does Sierra feel obliged to mention that she is not the intended recipient of Jamie's wooing. First red flag. We also learn as the audience that Jamie has a deaf younger brother. Sierra does not know this, but remember this, it will definitely come up again later. Next, Dan brings up the subject of catfishing in a total have your cake and eat it moment. Dan gives examples of serial killers and rapists luring unsuspecting victims in under false pretenses. Sierra is not a rapist or a serial killer, but she does repeatedly emotionally manipulate those around her and through the medium of her text with Jamie, gains significant leverage over him, all while the film uses upbeat music in an attempt to frame this as completely normal. It turns out Jamie isn't that great either, and he comes up with some brutally harsh lines throughout the film. He's talking to his friends the next day about his text conversation with Veronica and says,
"I really worried she was one of those pretty girls. Turns out she's really smart and really funny."
Great job, Netflix. You're really knocking it out of the park with these stereotypes. The film also uses Frodo as a stand-in for nerd twice, and it kind of sticks out being that Lord of the Rings is over 15 years old at this point. Maybe this is some evidence that the script isn't all that new, but was dug up out of some forgotten pile. Perhaps this explains all the inappropriate jokes. Jamie, at the encouragement of his friends, starts sending Sierra shirtless selfies, which is fine enough on his end, but tips the scales further in Sierra's direction with the burden to come clean about the situation. But nope, she's just going to hoard that picture away. We get a truly bizarre moment in the next scene where Sierra, a straight girl, asks Dan, a gay guy, what guys want in a girl. Dan then muses that it would be better if Jamie was gay and tries to wrestle Sierra's phone away from her to perv on his shirtless photos. Okay, Netflix, so we have a straight character minimizing her friend, who she has presumably known for a long time, so she should have known better's sexuality, because he is a man and thus speaks for all men, even straight ones. And then they both abuse the trust of Jamie by oogling his shirtless photos. Netflix, do you not see how this is creepy and wrong? The next day at school, Sierra is scheming with Dan on how to get closer to Jamie when she has a brilliant idea. In a move that is again fairly reminiscent of 10 Things, Sierra decides to manipulate the bullying Veronica to achieve her goal. Sierra's early interactions with Veronica show an unbridled confidence in the face of constant insults and takedowns from Veronica that is one of the only teachable moments of the film. And it's a shame that this portrayal of self-confidence is contaminated by Sierra's twisted ulterior motive. Sierra makes a deal with Veronica, saying that she will tutor her to make her more knowledgeable and appealing to in exchange for Veronica's direct involvement in the ongoing deception of Jamie. So Sierra, who again we're supposed to be rooting for in a cake-eating mess of a way, is, apart from expanding her catfishing operation, encouraging another female character to be fake and bend to the whim of the men in her life to get their respect and attention. This is some Meghan Trainor level BS. This awful sentiment is backed up by Veronica's mother, who scolds her for missing gym class because she's losing an opportunity to impress boys. When Veronica rebuffs her comment, the mother asks if she is now a lesbian because she brought Sierra home to tutor her.
That's gonna get you fired, boys.
That's gonna get you fired, boys.
Veronica's mother is under some self-imposed delusion that her ex-partner is dead, when in reality he has left her to be with someone younger. Her illness is made light of several times throughout the film, as the writers vie to make jokes about every stereotype they can think of. Despite Sierra telling her father Veronica is
a bad student and an even worse person,
she continues to tutor her and soon takes her catfishing to the next level. Veronica takes selfies for Sierra to use to falsify her identity. This is the first time Sierra has actually confirmed her identity as Veronica during her texting with Jamie. After this, she has no plausible deniability. She has reached the point of no return, and she flies past it and down off a cliff. Emboldened by this deception, Sierra actually speaks to Jamie over the phone, and of course lies that she is sick to cover up the fact that her voice sounds nothing like Veronica's. Second red flag. In the next scene, Sierra and Dan try to join a school sports team and race each other and a group of male students around a track. In this scene, an overweight female character and a gay male character fall far behind the other male students, collapse, and then vomit from exhaustion. This is played for laughs. In the next tutoring session with Veronica, Sierra has a Skype call with Jamie, where she speaks over the mic from behind the camera, and Veronica mouths along the words afterwards, pretending to be lagging. We also see in this scene something growing inside Veronica as she undergoes her character transition into one of the slightly more decent characters in the film. She also puts out her feelers for validation and companionship. She begins to like, not exactly Jamie, but what Jamie represents. This is indicated by a fairly throwaway line later in the film.
He's one of the good ones. He's hot and weird, smart, and
Do you like him?
No.
This desire for romantic companionship is completely ignored by Sierra despite their growing friendship. Sierra calls Jamie and we get another fat joke.
Hey.
It's me.
You working out? You sound out of breath.
Then Jamie asks Sierra out on a date. Sierra applies pressure to Veronica and she agrees to Sierra's insane plan to trick Jamie. The next scene just before the date is one of the most cringy in the entire film. Sierra and Dan are picking litter at some community event and run into Jamie playing catch in a park with his brother. You remember, the deaf one. Dan rushes up to say hi and embarrass Sierra, but she doesn't want to say anything to Jamie because he said he could
Pick your voice out of a lineup.
So what does she do? What genius plan does she have? Sierra pretends to be deaf and fakes sign language. Sierra is of course completely unconvincing with her sign language that she doesn't actually know, but does succeed in mocking a deaf person, so there's that. The actor who plays Jamie's younger brother is deaf in real life and he's since condemned this scene in the film. Good for him. Next we get to see Jamie, Sierra and Veronica all go on a date to the movies. Sierra tags along and hides in a row behind the others, occasionally passing secret communications to Veronica via text. In a cinema. We should just kill her now. Jamie tells Veronica he wants to drive her home, and this is where the film gets really weird. So Jamie and Veronica are talking about stars and crap, and then Jamie starts leaning in for a kiss. Sierra is underneath the car, eavesdropping. When Jamie leans in, Veronica tells him to close his eyes, and then swaps out for Sierra so she can kiss him instead, and then swaps back in before he opens them again. What? Can you imagine if you had that experience? Just imagine getting close to someone, closing your eyes and then opening them to find some stranger with you instead. It's pretty disgusting, frankly. Shame on you, Netflix. Layers upon layers of trust are being violated here, but the film still wants us on Sierra's side and we've still got the upbeat music playing. All the flags are red, the sky is red, communism has won, all glory to the motherland. So, after Veronica has helped Sierra make the moves on Jamie, Sierra accompanies her to a party where Veronica is trying it on with her college kid crush, Spence. During the party, Sierra overhears Spence saying that he plans to emotionally manipulate Veronica so that she will have sex with him. And instead of warning Veronica about this, Sierra gets drunk, passes out and then drives home still drunk after coming to and not being able to get through to Veronica. Meanwhile, Veronica defends Sierra against comments from her friends before running into Spence. Spence lures her back to his car and the two have sex. When Sierra gets home, she calls Jamie, still drunk, and she ironically has a moment of clarity and nearly confesses her lies before passing out. The next morning, Sierra's mother chides her for showing up late and drunk, and Sierra brushes her comments off. That day at school is the day of the poem assignment, which Sierra has not completed. She does not accept responsibility for her failings and instead blames her environment. Veronica reveals to Sierra that Spence has dumped her over DM. Spence sends Veronica a photo of them kissing in his car, and Sierra saves the picture. Sierra unloads her problems onto Dan, and he says that he was surprised Sierra even went to a party after making excuses to Dan that they couldn't hang out. More lies and deception. Jamie surprises Veronica by showing up at her school for a big match the two schools are having. He quickly kisses her after a cringy line about how he can now show her off to his friends.
It's 2018, guys.
Sierra sees the kiss and instead of speaking to Veronica about it to see if there's a reasonable explanation, like she's still undercover, she undertakes some completely over-the-top revenge, like the horrible individual she is. She hacks into Veronica's phone and edits the photo of Veronica and Spence to show how they broke up over DM. Sierra then takes advantage of Veronica's large online following to publicly shame her. The edited image is broadcast by a student onto the school leaderboard for the whole school to see, and of course Jamie and Veronica both see this. Jamie accuses Veronica of cheating on him with Spence, and she reveals her and Sierra's lies. After this realization, Jamie walks off and tells them both to leave him alone. Here, I wish the film had had the balls to have Jamie's story be over. I just cannot buy that someone would want anything to do with someone who'd done that to them. And the worst part is Jamie doesn't know everything. He doesn't know about the deceptive kiss that, in all honesty, is a sexual assault. Veronica then stings Sierra with a long overdue dose of truth.
I saw you kiss him.
Well, he thinks I'm you. Remember? That was the whole plan. I told you things I haven't told anyone. You think I'm mean? You should check the mirror, because your looks are the least ugly thing about you.
This moment is slightly neutered by Veronica's complicity in the catfishing. Her motivation for telling this to Sierra is not because she has an organic moment of introspection. She's just lashing out because Sierra got her first. It is at this point that the film has taken the cake out of the box, set it on a plate, seized a knife, and is plunging it squarely into the moist centre. What follows this most dramatic turn of events is 5 minutes of Sierra crying and sulking around, before cozying up to each of the people she screwed over and hitting them with a quick soz. She actually tries hardest with Veronica, who she sends a song to, and it's certainly possible that a person could win back some of their friends, having done what Sierra's done in this film, but it would take time, genuine willingness to change, patience, and the realization that it will likely never be the same as it was before the betrayal. But this film seriously glosses over all this in about 2 minutes. We see Sierra transition so fast, and everyone just buys into it. Most egregious of all is Jamie. Granted, a friend who betrays you might be forgiven and sort of be a friend in the future, although with some baggage, but how many people would really want to start a relationship with someone who betrayed you by doing the things that Sierra did, before you've even properly met them? There is even a line by Jamie about the kiss from earlier, which, of course, is set to upbeat music. The cake has been cut into pieces. The cake has been eaten. All that remains are crumbs. I feel like the writers of this saw Edge of 17 and 10 Things I Hate About You, and it tried to do what those films did, except they just fundamentally don't understand how to make it work. And Sierra Burgess is a Loser ends up being a lost cause. The characters in those films make sense and the narrative arcs are earned. I'm not meaning to just recount the plot here, I just felt the need to give some sense of scale to how horrendous the main character and other characters in this film are, and how much this is just glossed over by the narrative structure and presentation of the film. Not to mention the massive collateral damage caused along the way by belittling a multitude of stereotypes. The sheer inadequacy of Sierra's apology is astounding. She is quite possibly the worst protagonist that we are expected to support that I've ever seen in a film. Netflix is certainly feeling the heat with this one. The critical reception has been kind of weathering, and it's clear to see why. There's just so much wrong with this film. But, you know, they've produced some pretty good OC in the past, so there is hope for the future. And at least it was better than Bright.
Fairy lives don't matter today. You ain't gotta do them like that. That was nasty.